Hello everyone. 5 years ago, I finished this workbench with a mixture of tung oil and varnish. It has served me well during all these years, but the time has come, I guess, to refinish it and give it a fresh look. Given all the scratches and dents that this bench has had, it deserves a new look. First, I need to clean it thoroughly of any residue before moving to the next step. Next, I'm checking flatness in case it needs to be flattened. Maybe not this time. It looks decent and within the acceptable range. I need to mark the whole surface with a pencil to help me track the sanding progress. Depending on how deep the scratches and dents are, I decided to start with a 40 grit sandpaper. Sanding is a straightforward process, but some techniques should be considered. First, don't put too much downward pressure on the sander, as this will generate heat, and this is the biggest enemy for sanding. It puts unnecessary pressure on the machine, wearing out your sanding disc and making the dust gummy, which will fill the small spaces between the grit, leading to clogging and generating even more heat. Second, you need to find the sweet spot between your sander's revolutions per minute and the surface speed or your feed rate. This will reduce or increase the sanding marks left over due to the orbital motion of the sander. If your sander started to develop pigtail-like marks on the surface, then you need to reduce the surface speed or increase the sander speed, or both. You should often check your sanding paper, and if you find gum starting to build up, clean it with a rubber stick like so. This problem will appear on finished surfaces, as we are sanding the old finish, not the wood at the start. I will continue sanding until the surface is free from most scratches and dents. I have some deep dents that I won't bother removing as long as they don't affect the surface workability. There will be no point in spending the time to remove them, as I will be producing more as soon as I start using the workbench again. Now I move to 100 grit side, then 180 grit, and stop right there. You can do 40, 80, 180 or 150, not super critical for a workbench. When using finer grit, it is good to reduce the sander's speed to 4 and reduce the surface speed or your feed speed. This helps reduce heat buildup and gives more control over the sanding operation. Checking for flatness again. This medical gauze is useful when applying wood stain. This is the only stain color I have, so I decided to use it. Let me know what you think of this color on beechwood. Now leave the stain for 10 minutes or so. Then wipe off the excess stain. This is important to avoid blotching. Give the surface a light sanding with 240 or 320 sandpaper. The sound of sanding will fade out once you start breaking all the raised wood grains. You can also feel it with your hand as you progress in sanding. Stop sanding the areas that feel smooth again. Brush out any dust residue on the sandpaper and continue smoothing the surface. Give a quick vacuum to remove any dust particles left from the sanding process. I will be using a water-based polyfinish. I dilute it with distilled water to make it more spreadable and easier to apply. You can use a foam brush to apply the water-based finish. Instead, I will apply it using a mini paint roller. I pour a little of water-based finish directly onto the surface and quickly begin to spread it in straight motions. I use even and light strokes, no pressure is needed. The lovely thing about water-based finishes is that they have little odor, and they don't yellow as they age. And this is not the case with oil-based poly, as they tend to yellow as they age or when exposed to direct sunlight. I will apply 5 thin coats and sand between each coat, except for the final coat, of course. Your other hand will guide you through the sanding operation. If it's smooth to the touch, then move to the next area. The vacuum is essential after each sanding round. The final optional part is adding hard wax on top of the final coat. Spread a thin coat of wax evenly, covering the entire surface. Leave it for 10 to 15 minutes to dry, then buff it with a polisher or without. Light pressure is a key. No need for pressure, just patience. Finally, buff the surface again with a lint-free rag. Here is the final result. I could have done better, but knowing that this is a workbench, it should be okay. This is how it was before, and this is after. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below. Thank you for watching.